Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So, welcome to the latest episode of Sustainable HR. So, good afternoon again. My name is Ren, and I'll be your host for today's episode. So, I'll be taking over from Rickson and Danica for today. So, we sorry to miss them, but today I'll be the one who's hosting. So thanks for tuning in for today, and we have a very interesting episode, and I think everyone will be excited to hear from our guest, and it's especially the sustainability is a very big concept. So it's good to hear or be clarified with the fundamental on sustainability, and this will be shared more our- with our guest. All right. So let me introduce our guest first. Um, um, his name is Vincent De Paz, and he's a chemical engineer by profession with a more than a decade long career in sustainable development with special focus in environmental management, climate change, and China sustainability report. Unlike me, he has a dual master's degree. First one in MBA from Delaware University and master's degree in development management from the Asian Institute of Man. So he has worked in various industries such as manufacturing, mining, construction, consultancy, and energy as a sustainability lead. But I'll let him explain more about his career. Um, so let's give a round of applause to Vincent De Paz.
Hi, Ren. Thank you very much. Yeah, and thank you for the introduction. Yeah, I'm Vince De Paz, and yeah, I started as actually I started my career as a technical person. Then I started to transition to sustainability space more than a decade ago. So medyo mahaba na rin yung
Yeah.
um, experience. But I've always been a corporate guy, and the places where I work for, the big corporations in different industries that you mentioned, they have different lessons about sustainability that I learned through time in this period. Yeah, and in every industry, every company has their own sustainability issues and well materiality issues that they need to focus on, and that's why sustainability is a great career because it's broad, but if you learn to know what are the different aspects per industry and per company, and apply these best practices to different companies, then um, eventually you'll get all corporations aligned with the sustainability kind of goals or vision. So yeah.
That's good. Good to hear. You mentioned materiality. So I think the audience will be interested more on the on the on this concept. Maybe yeah, for you, how do you define sustainability?
Sustainability for me is actually it's going back to the definition of United Nations. It's um, thinking about the future generations' welfare. Ultimately, sustainability is really a mindset. And I know that aside from the United Nations definition, there are a lot of definitions available online. Um,
Yeah.
to get to the point of realizing and living in a sustainable world, it's we have to be able to have that mindset. And
Correct.
it's quite a challenge, given that we have a lot of problems nowadays in the world, but we have to do it. We don't have any way forward but to adapt the sustainability mindset. Yeah.
That's good to hear, Vince, that you mentioned. It's about mine. And so for our viewers who are in the HR world, they might be intimidated with this new or latest concept. So, what can you let aside from let's break that mindset? What would be the basic for HR professional or HR practitioner?
Okay. For because sustainability is a broad topic. It involves a triple bottom line: environment, social, and governance, and economic. Sorry, environment, social, and economic. But for HR practitioners, especially, they need to zero in a social aspect, social impacts. For especially
Social impact.
for HR, and for people in the uh, before kasi it's human resources develop or human resources department, but now it's human capital management. So for people
Yeah.
in this space, our mindset should always be what kind of work should I do today in order to benefit the future stakeholders or future generation of stakeholders. So we have different stakeholders. We have internal and external, but for human capital people, management people, it's the internal stakeholders that they need to focus on.
Yeah,
And
that's
we
correct.
talk
Yeah.
about internal stakeholders, especially employees, diba? So, and I remember being introduced with the strategic human resources management before in our MBA days. But it now changed. The paradigm has been changed from being strategic to being sustainable. So with this, actually, there are three concepts that I have in mind. One is the triple bottom line, focusing on the environment,
Triple bottom
economic, and
line.
social impact. Yeah, and then there's also common good approach, meaning what will be the benefit of the community as a whole? Going back to the question, is it beneficial for the those who are concerned, like our internal stakeholders? And then there's also good governance. Of course, top management must have that capability to strategize the business, to strategize, to make strategies. And there has to be a level of competency and unimpeachable integrity when it comes to making it work. Yeah. So these are some of the concepts that I have in mind of when we say sustainability and how it's being applied to human capital management. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Vince. So as a recap for our viewers, I think Vince mentioned three fundamental
Yeah.
concepts. First one is triple bottom line,
Yeah.
common good approach,
Yeah.
and good governance. All
Good
right.
governance.
I think those most of our practitioners will be familiar because they'll be maybe they'll be doing it already. But I think as you mentioned, it's more already overcoming strategic HR. And so what will be like um probably what be the action steps that they need to take, or like for example, I know already that it's good governance, but how do I take it further? How do you know to make more sustainable?
Yeah. Okay. So I guess we will go now to let me just share with you some practical tips or best practices siguro when it comes to sustainability for HR and how they can implement this or put this into action. So as I mentioned, remember that internal stakeholders really are not just resources; they are the company's capital, probably the
Yeah.
most important one. So we should treat them as capital assets. And when we say assets are investments. So if a company would put time, money, and effort to ensure that investments grow, so we can make the company grow too. So if these assets are being improved or um, efforts, time, and money are being put into it, then of course the company would also grow. So as HR professionals, I would urge you to look at the human resource process or human capital management process and think about how can I make each step in the process beneficial to my assets. So, for example, in the recruitment selection, can you make it more inclusive? Were you able to select candidates without any discrimination just because they belong to this kind of school, just because they have disabilities that don't interfere with their jobs, or they came from a different social class, or they have different sexual preference or gender identity. How about succession planning? So it's also included. Do you have a strategy to ensure that even if one of your senior managers retire, and also how about your training and development programs? Are your training programs limited only to those managerial level and up? How about those who are in the operations? In terms of compensation and benefits, are your contractual employees who already exceeded their tenurial limit for their contract stipulation? Were they regularized already? If you're an HR person, you should be aware about these sustainability concepts applied to human capital management and act on it, not just because it's a company policy, but because these are areas that are needed to be looked into by management objectively. And yeah, and there's another tip. We know that we can only manage what we can measure. So the question is, do we know how to measure them, and do we know what we measure? So if yes, then then how can we measure them? What are the platforms or mechanisms to measure? So the basic idea about tracking HR data is not just to disclose them in the annual sustainability report or for any report in that matter. We monitor human capital management data because this is where your human capital management decisions and actions will be based on. For example, if you want to create programs related to employee engagement, such as team building or skill capacity
Yeah.
building, let me ask you first, what is the current employee engagement score of your company? And which aspect of employee engagement do you need to focus on? Maybe the disengagement is come from compensation and benefits or leadership. So do you allocate that leadership is actually the cause or the employment engagement issue? So these are just some of the things that are critical to know by human resources management or human capital management, so that they'll know what to do and they can map out action plans to work on it. Yeah.
All right. So I love to I love what we're review. So even from recruitment and succession plan, um, employee engagement, human or training and development, there's already that sustainability concept in. Um, but for example, um, let's say I'm an HR practice, and you say that to me, and I mentioned to you that unfortunately I do agree with you, but the senior management is not that open. We have a different culture. How would you address that?
Yeah. Well, there has to be a venue to address these concerns, but it has to be elevated by the people from the ground to the top management. Probably during discussion with their KPIs or discussion about their KPIs or discussion about the strategy
Keep
of the company, or during board meetings or during company meetings. Just the mere fact that it's included in the table discussion um, is a way forward so that it can be elevated. The discussion will be elevated um, in terms of sustainability, in terms of sustainable human capital management. It is a concern because sometimes it was not being brought up to the governance team, to the management team, because of the fear of retaliation, fear of threat, fear of there
Yeah.
are some risks for employees to disclose. So I think
Yeah.
by being protected, by them protected, even being open to feedback like this to improve the process and to improve the governance is the way to go. Yeah, it's not easy. Again, sustainability involves leadership, and we know that leaders are the ones who are being uh, they're the first ones for the frontliners, of course, and they're the, sabi nga, sila yung unang
Yeah,
namamatay
I
sa
do agree.
gera, di ba? Because they're leading. So it takes a lot of guts, and it's a challenge, but that these things will be discussed um,
Yeah,
by
so
the top management.
yeah, I think yeah, you gave a good answer. Um, that's correct. Like you might our viewers might say to us that you're too MBA. You're I know you're like you're saying KPI, but you're correct on that part. It involves a lot of change management, and I think like, I do agree. You be aggressive in terms of maybe advocating it to senior management or senior lead. And actually, we were talking about earlier, and some companies are into in sustainability practices. So as HR practice, we can advise you that we can advise you that it's 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 you can you people are with you. The community is with you. Yeah. So don't be afraid to make those change. So I think maybe years ago it won't be um, something to be accepted, but right now there's the pivot in this or a change in this environment. So maybe yeah, aside from encouraging senior management, senior lead, what would be the challenges that you can see that HR needs to anticipate in this world of the new world of sustainability?
Oh, that's an interesting question, actually. And in terms of challenges for human capital management, for many people in human capital management, their fundamental assumptions, values, and mindsets are, of course, being challenged. And it's a driver to adapt to uh, certain actions in such a way that they need to make sure that whatever challenges that's being thrown at them, they can take on because they imbibe a sustainability mindset. The challenge there is that how can we change the mindset of people to be more sustainable? Um, and this
Yeah,
is why we must avoid those non-sustaining values that actually do not promote the well-being of people for the present and of course for the future, such as I mean values such as individualism, non-democratic values, the self-indulgence, and the freedoms of knowledge. I mean, currently everyone has an opinion and a view of their own reality without relying on facts. We have fake news. So, and
yeah,
it's important for human capital management to know their data. And I'm going back, I'm segueing, I'm going back to, I'm redirecting this discussion actually to another challenge. It's um, finding out what is truthful data and how can human capital management employees build on uh, information that is really relevant, significant for the company. Corporations are running on certain budget and limited resources.
yep,
So the decisions and actions have to be deliberate. Now, can you imagine making sustainable decisions using substandard data? For example, in terms of the number of employees to hire, or the in terms of training and development programs, in terms of health and safety. So, what are
yep,
the projects or activities that human capital management or human resources can line up? How can they have effective programs to address these concerns if they don't know their data? So that's another challenge. So we have mindset and data, and then the other thing is communicating sustainability. So it has to be bite-sized. I mean, sustainability is really broad. Some sustainability concepts are really too technical, and it has to be bite-sized enough so that people can understand. So some employees would know the definition of greenhouse gases, for example, but they know actually what it actually does to the world. Some employees would know the concept of gender equality, but do they have an idea how they might be suffering from gender inequality already without them knowing it? And then there's another concept, um, which is I think more important. Some employees know the word leadership, but do they really know what it's like to become an effective one? So what are the things that need to be involved so that leadership can be practiced and can be lived? And lastly, the challenge for human capital management really in terms of integrating it with sustainability is to put everything into action. We have a lot of ideas, we have a lot of concepts to learn and to study, but of course we also don't want these concepts and ideas to end up being in the books or just
Yes,
being
sir.
reported and presented to management. We need actions,
But that's
we
just
need projects,
the
and go back to yeah, and we go back to how can you come up with actions? Use data,
yeah.
use the crucial information about your the current state really of your and don't mask it. Whatever keep discuss it in office forums and do something about it. So yeah, it's and I think the critical part is putting everything in action. Yeah.
Yes. So that's good. So good to hear. So I think Vince mentioned that aside from mindset, we need to be data driven because there's a lot of fake news out there. So as HR practitioners or HR professionals, we need to be at the forefront of reporting correct data or actual figures. I think the third that Vince mentioned is taking those ideas into reality or into or actionable items. So yeah, there's a tendency that after probably uh, doing the sustainability report, but after this is a report. There's no action take, taken to be done. And I think that's what we
Yeah.
teach then as well in our classes that it's I know it's a lot of thinking because of when for example there are some sustainability concepts proposed by our students. Sometimes I do question them, so maybe you need a little more thinking. So it it involves um, thinking time. So um, so I think for HR practitioners, you should be yeah to have that mindset that data driven approach and maybe the patience to execute your to refine your the ideas and eventually the ideas to act. Or that's a very good
It involves a process. That's a good point, Ren. It actually involves a process and evaluating the process. If the application or if the way to address it didn't work the first time, then go back, reevaluate, then to make it work. Ultimately, we are focused on the
yeah to
outcome.
it.
Human capital management people focus on the outcome. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Um, maybe one last question, Vince. They want to learn more. What can you advise to them?
Okay. Yeah. Sustainability with human capital management. The first learning that I would like to share with you is to ask relevant questions to challenge the status quo. management department are afraid of knowing their data, or not just knowing their data, communicating it to management because of the fear that they are not doing enough. But
Yep.
how can the company improve its processes and their systems if no one is actually speaking up and no one is challenging the status quo? It's a challenge. It's not easy, but it's a way to move forward. So that's one. The second one that I would like to address is that in human capital management will need to create a working environment wherein people can come up with ideas without.
I think we lost Vince there. All right. Yeah. So me, what we would, I think is,
Yeah, sorry for that. Can you hear me?
yeah, yeah. Sorry. Little
Okay,
bit.
that's good. So, yeah, creating a working environment again, and let me just repeat that: creating a working environment wherein people can come up with ideas without fear of being embarrassed or threatened. That's another learning, and
Yeah.
learning to adapt to the changes brought by technology or the new generation employees. So these are important things to remember in practicing or integrating sustainability in human capital management. Also remember that there's no such thing as a sustainability expert. Sustainability, going back, is a mindset. So you should decide to care about sustainability issues, be responsible to continually learn about improving the lives of your stakeholders. So these are just some of the learnings, that tidbits of wisdom about integrating sustainability with human capital management that I want to share to everyone. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Vince. Those were those are so powerful answers. There's a lot to unpack for everyone. So I think maybe can you share to the viewers where they can get you be connected?
All right. Yeah. So they can reach me using my email. My personal email is vincentdepaz@yahoo.com. And you can also get in touch with me through Facebook, through my Facebook account. And yeah, I think these are just some of my two platforms that I'm using for these kinds of engagement. Yeah.
Wow. So so yeah. So if you have any questions, you can maybe shoot an email to Vince. Um, so I think that's all for our episode today. So watch out for the next episode. So it's every second week of the month. So we'll see. Maybe you can see Rixion, Danica again, and me for another topic of sustainable age HR. So hope you can subscribe, right, and follow us in Sustainable Age, and you can rewatch this episode so in the YouTube of Sustainable Page. All right. So thank you for everyone for listening today, and happy Independence Day for uh, for all.
Happy Independence Day.
Thank you.